live, laugh.
And I jumped and just went crashing. He instead caught. Beer City Bruiser.
How's it going, everybody? This is Daniel. I'm joined by Roberto Moss, and we are excited to bring on our guest for this week. He is none other than the Beer City Bruiser. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. How about you guys?
Doing good. You just had to clean up kind of a mess, so I think we're definitely doing better than you. But we're excited to have you on. Before we get started, where can everybody find you on socials? How can they support you? And how can they book you if there's any promoters listening as well?
So on Twitter, I'm at BCB Winchester. On Instagram, I'm at Beer City Bruiser. Facebook, it's the Beer City Bruiser. You can go to my Pro Wrestling Tees store. It's prowrestlingtees.com/Beer City Bruiser. I'm on Cameo if anybody wants a shout out, which is Beer City Bruiser on there. And then if you go to a website, it's called Brothers Gador. That's BROTHERSGADOR. They sell like wrestling buddies of me, and you can get them there if you need them. And if you want to book me, just DM me on any of my socials, or my email's all over them too.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned Cameo. What is the weirdest Cameo request that you've gotten?
To name a baby. I've had to name 3 babies.
3.
So 3 different people have hit me up to give suggestions for their baby.
Have you followed up? Do you know if they actually took that advice? I think we lost you for a second. All right.
Oh, yep, yeah, I'm still here. So, yeah, one of them took the name, and I was very happy.
What are the suggestions that you gave them?
Oh God, it ranged. I had Megatron, which I thought would always be a cool name. Optimus Prime. One of the kids just Stinky because the kids stink.
Yeah.
And then the one that someone took was Thomas. Just
okay.
Because I threw out Thomas.
It's a solid.
Yeah. When I asked that question, there was no way that I could have expected such a great answer. So, like you could just get the pretty normal stuff, but it definitely delivered in that regard.
No, they're paying for me to do that. I gotta give them some decent suggestions that the mother of my children shot down that I want to name my kids.
Yeah, my wife and I.
I like it.
My wife and I recently had our first kid, and when we were trying to pick the name, she had a list that she had her like probably high school, like just planning it out. Like every time she would think of one, she would write it down. But the funny part is some of them it would be like Stephanie, and then it would be parentheses dog ? Because she's like, this is also a cute name for a dog. So any of the ones that had dog, I was like, no, we're not. off the board. But yeah, Beer City Bruiser. You're from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Yep. Originally from Milwaukee, now living in Charlotte.
What is your Mount Rushmore of beers?
Oh God, Yingling was always my number one because in the Midwest you could never get it. It was only strictly East Coast beer. So the only time I ever got it was when Ring of Honor would do East Coast shows. So it was one of those things where I couldn't get it all the time. So it became like that nectar of the gods to me. And I always get made fun of by East Coast guys because it's like you can get it anywhere.
Yeah, of course.
So that'd be number one. Miller Lite would be number 2, just because it's a Milwaukee thing, 3 would be Coors Light, and then 4th would be Guinness. I love a good Guinness. And Session Moth Martina has been bugging me to have an actual true Guinness from Ireland, and I haven't gotten over it yet, but I will.
Yeah, it's a good thing to be bugged about.
Yeah.
For sure. Are you like strictly just kind of like basic beer? Do you have any like a taste for IPAs or anything like that, or is it just stick to the basics?
No, I will try anything. I love doing brewery tours and microbrewery tours. Before Ring of Honor got sold, Brian and I had pitched ideas where they should fly us in a day before an
Mhm.
event or a day after and find like a little local brewery and then have us do an appearance there. Because what we found out is towards the end when we still had live crowds, local breweries would bring us beer. They'd be like, "Hey, can you bring our beer to the ring?"
Mhm.
And then Ring of Honor would advertise because as long as they signed the waiver saying that's okay. So we used to get free beer all the time. And I'm the type of person, I'll try anything once. If I don't like it, I don't like it. If I like it, cool.
Do you have like a beer that like you think of and you're just like never again?
Any Canadian beer.
Really? No
Yeah.
LeBlanc Blue or
No Black Blue, no Molson's, none of that. I cannot stand Canadian beer. I think it is the worst beer on the planet. They might know their whiskey, but they don't know their beer.
Not at all. They don't know.
No.
What
It-
do you have a
it's-
Mount Rushmore of cigars? I saw that you like cigars too.
So I actually don't smoke cigars. I just chew on them. So I don't really, and everyone gets shocked by it. I honestly don't know like cigar brands. I have a collection of cigars from what people have given me.
yeah.
But I don't smoke cigars. I just chew on them on the way to the ring, and
What's the best tasting cigar?
so far the Swisher Sweets because you can get like the strawberry or the raspberry, all that. But I like the
Yeah.
big, thick cigars that you can actually see on camera, not like the little cigarellos and stuff. So like some
Yeah.
Presidentes and stuff.
A humble request because you can get it at a gas station.
Okay.
A Garcia Vega.
All right, I'll try that next time.
All right.
Actually, this weekend when I wrestle, I will stop by and it's a local gas station. I'll pick it up.
$3.
Don't tell
Yeah.
people that. I gotta make it look like I got expensive cigars.
Yeah. I thought I liked cigars at one point. But I think I just liked, and I think that a lot of it is with any type of smoking, is how cool it makes you look. It's
Well,
like it's bad, but you look pretty cool with a cigarette or a cigar. Like
the way the cigar came about was actually Steve Carino. When I first did my top prospect tournament, I just had the black trunks and boots and all that. And Carino goes, "You need more, like for your character." So he went and found a keg for me to bring to the ring, and he's like, "You also need a cigar, like badass, like brawlers have cigars." I'm like, okay. So I had a buddy. Carino had somebody go get a cigar, but what they didn't tell me was it was like a 7 or 8 day old cigar. It's been out of the package, so it's that real brittle.
yeah,
The tobacco gets brittle. So when I put it in my mouth and I bit on it, it just like explodes. So the whole time you watch my first top prospect match, I'm picking tobacco out of my mouth. But then it slowly evolved where I knew what I liked and what I got to get. And then Miller Lite, actually, the keg that you guys see when I was on TV and stuff is actually donated to me by Miller Lite. They gave me the pony keg, and it's all decked out in Beer City Bruiser stuff and dents from all over the world, and now it sits in my trophy room.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So
is this like a gateway drug to chewing tobacco?
I used to chew back in college. I played football, so you had to. So yeah.
Fair enough.
it sounds like you've had some pretty cool stuff given to you in wrestling. What is like maybe like one or two coolest things that you've ever been given as a result of you being involved in wrestling?
The keg was one, just because I didn't know how big it would be a part of my career. And then the next one would actually be I have a beer can that after I got done drinking it, I had the guys that I was drinking with sign it. And the guys I was drinking it with were Haku and Muda, Great Muda, and it was at the Madison Square Garden show.
Okay.
And so what was cool is we get done with the Battle Royal, and I walked in the locker room to thank them. And Ming goes, you got the best gimmick in wrestling. I said, what do you mean? He says, you get paid to drink beer in the ring. I says, yeah.
Mhm.
He says, well, and he's talking to Muda, and they're going back and forth in Japanese. And he asked Muda if he wants a beer, and Muda says, yeah. And he says, okay, I'll go grab some. I got some of my gear back, because I always travel with the beer. And he's like, no, sit down. He called over a young boy. The young boy came back with some beer, and then we spent the next hour just cracking open beers and them telling me stories and stuff like that. So I'm like, you know what, pictures are cool, but like, how cool is this? And
Yeah.
not only I get the picture taken, but I got the can signed too.
That's amazing. What is like one of the biggest takeaways that you got from that conversation?
That to never back down in this business. You know, the business will eat you up and chew you out if you're not strong. And you know, they kept telling me, yeah, you're on TV now. You just wrestled in Madison Square Garden and all that, but like you're gonna have a downside too. Don't let it beat you up physically, like mentally. Don't let it. If you get fired, you get fired. Move on. There's more bookings, and just to constantly stay positive, because in wrestling there's so many negatives, and they just basically reinforce. You know, there's you don't have to always have a contract in order to make a living wrestling. You know, you have it now, but it could go away. And little I know, you know, 2 years later, 3 years later, you know, the company would be sold and contract would be gone. But I took their advice and moved here, and now I'm still really successful in wrestling.
Awesome. So you've experienced great highs in wrestling, but where does that all begin for you? Like as a kid, were you big into wrestling or?
Yeah, I've been a fan since I was 7. My uncle took me to a fair, in the AWA, because I grew up in the Midwest, so AWA was the big thing, and they were at like a local county fair. And my uncle and my grandfather were big wrestling fans, so my uncle took me because it was a live, you know, see it live, and the main event was Brody versus Hanson,
Oh wow.
and they brawled right past me, and I just remember being a 7-year-old kid looking up at Brody, and he looked 12 feet tall. You know what I mean? He's just covered in blood and sweat, and he's doing the huss, and he's chasing hands, and it's just like I looked at my uncle and went, "This is the greatest thing of my life. Like I want this nonstop." So I just got hooked on wrestling right then and there, and it's been a part of my life since then.
Yeah, when I was doing research for this, I saw like reoccurring themes on your social, and that's Bruiser Brody and Harley Race. Are those like kind of your big guys when you first started, or is that something that's, or at least Harley Race has developed as you've grown older?
Brody's always been my number one, and then I always had respect for Harley, but then Harley became on my list when I started training with him, and I got to see not just the wrestler, but Harley the man, and how good of a man he was. And the school would always open. We'd have training from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from like 5 to 9. But he'd be at the school at 10:30 in the morning. So I'd always go to the school because, you know, I'm 8 hours from home. I don't have a job. I'm here for wrestling. Why not go and talk to him? And I do like chores and stuff around the school, but then he'd sit down and we'd break down matches of his. He'd show me old booking sheet. You know, he had books of the old Wrestling at the Chase booking sheets.
Mhm.
And he'd talk to me about the business side of wrestling and how to talk to a promoter and how to work out money. And like really, I went to college with Harley, and I gained a lot of respect for his mind and how humble he was, even though he didn't have to be. You know, everybody knows who Harley was. He could have been a giant asshole if he wanted to, and he wasn't. He was very humble and wanting to make wrestling better than he found it. And I think he has, and that's what I live now on when I'm training the students that I train is, you know, wrestling was here long before you. It's gonna be here long after you. So while you're here, just make it better. You know, and that's what Harley always preached to us. And I got to be really close to him, and then going back and watching his matches as a wrestler instead of a fan, it's like, okay, yeah, I see. I was a fan of his as a kid. You know, King Harley versus Hogan. You know, the table bump and all that, and I remember all that. And I remember him and Flair for the gold and all that. So I remembered the Harley stuff, but I didn't really start. I don't want to say I didn't respect it because I always respected him, but I had more respect after I got to know the man.
Mhm. Yeah, it's almost like if you play an instrument, like I love Led Zeppelin, but when I first started playing guitar and you go back, like you try to play some of the stuff that like Jimmy Page did, like it's like this whole other appreciation because now you know what it takes to get there,
Yeah.
and you kind of see what the effort that it puts into it. Um, what is like your favorite Harley Race story if you had one?
I have so many, but I will I gotta think of a pretty clean one. 4th of July was a big thing for Harley, and he'd invite all the guys out to his condo out on Lake of the Ozarks. It was on the lake. And Harley had a boat, which everybody knows. And he would tell everybody, bring your own, it's a BYOB type party. So, you have had to be about 10 of us, I think, and each of us bought 2 cases of beer, plus Harley had a bunch of beer, and Harley loved Crown Royal. He loved bourbon, so we always had that. And you just start the night off sitting in the hot tub, drinking, sharing stories and whatever. Well, it gets to be later in the night, and the fireworks start going off. And Harley was always joking, those aren't fireworks. You guys want to see fireworks? And he goes inside his condo, and he goes somewhere. We don't know what's going on. He comes out with a giant Colt 45, like old Western revolver. And he's waving it around at all, like, I'll show you guys some fireworks. And he's got, he's just waving it around. He's talking about how he's, I can shoot that boat right there and put a hole in it. I'll show you guys fireworks. And BJ, his wife, she came out, she says, Harley, and she took the gun away from him. It wasn't loaded, but she took the gun because you can't be doing, you're not supposed to be mixing drugs or drinking and guns. Mm-hmm. And she walks away, and he goes, I wonder what she'd do if she found out I had this. And he pulled out another gun. I don't know what kind it was, but it was another gun. He goes, and this one has a bigger boom.
That is amazing. Yeah, very good story. I just blinked for a second. That story was so good.
Was the gun amongst some of the ways that he taught you to deal with the promoters?
No, but he'd always share stories that it used to be he always traveled with a gun. A lot of the guys back then used to travel with a gun. I guess Kamala used to carry a gun in his boot in the ring. Oh. And so that was like a common thing for them back then. The way dealing with promoters is Harley's always tell us you get your money one way or another, and that's why a lot of conversations happen away from people, because promoter doesn't want to pay you. You're going to get him to pay you. But he was a gun collector, and like I said, he was telling us how it's changed, because back in the day they used to have guns everywhere. Everybody had one, it was the Wild West.
Yeah. Especially in wrestling. Like when, like, I don't know if you've watched any of the Tales from the Territories, but like some of the stories that you hear on there, and I'm sure you heard them firsthand from Harley, but like people are crazy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, they were.
Is there anybody like of note that was at those 4th of July parties that was training with you at the time, or just attending the parties?
Oh yeah. Trevor Murdoch obviously was there. Being a Harley trainee. Joe Henning, Ted DiBiase Jr. was there for a little bit. Tommaso Ciampa. I got to know Tommaso at the Harley school and stuff. And then those are probably the major ones that have gone on and done stuff. There's a lot of indie wrestlers that have come and gone in the Midwest that were there.
Yeah. Is that your first like foray into wrestling, or did you get any training beforehand? I know you mentioned you moved 8 hours away. Is that like the first jump, or was there like a little? No,
my first training, the guy who first broke me, and I always say that he took me to grade school and high school, was Trevor Adonis. He was the way I got started was me and my buddies used to always watch all the pay-per-views and get drunk and then go out in the yard and beat the crap out of each other and hit each other with stuff. And we were at one of the pay-per-views, and we were getting ready to go do that. And the guy there goes, well, hey, have you ever thought about being a wrestler? And at the time, there were no schools per se. It was somebody would train you, whatever. And I said, yeah, I've always been interested, but there's no way to do that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And he says, well, actually, my neighbor just had a ring set up in our yard, and they're trying to teach yarders. They have the news over, and they're trying to show that yarders, if you don't have to backyard wrestle, you can get training. He's like, you want to go over and meet him? I said, yeah, sure. And so he took me over to this guy's house. His name was Jet Bennett, and I'm still friends with Jet to this day. But I always ask him too, like, what was it at? It's 11 o'clock at night, and here's this drunk fat kid standing on your back porch and wanting to know about professional wrestling. And he says, yeah, when I opened the door, I had a baseball bat behind my back because he didn't know what was going on. But he gave me a list of names. And the first one actually was Ace Steel. And it was the Steel Domain Wrestling School in Chicago. That's where Punk and Cabana came from. And when I called, the school had just closed because Danny and Ace were having a falling out. So the next guy on the list was this guy named Trevor Adonis, and he actually owned a gym where I went to college. So I went and met him, and he's like, yeah, he's like, here's what you do. You pay $150, come out to this bar before the show. We do a 2-hour fantasy camp. And then if you want it, you know, I'll tell you how much I'll charge you, and we'll work it from there. I'm like, okay. And my 2-hour fantasy camp ended up being 4 hours long, just because I started picking it up. And he's like, you're ready to go. I'm going to teach you. And, you know, don't even worry about, you know, me giving you anybody else. I'll work with you and all that. And I was like, all right, cool. And it all started there. And then when I was debating, I'd done stuff with Harley before moving down there. I'd done those camps. He always did the week-long camps. And every year they gave out a scholarship to the school, or they gave out a chance to go to the Noah Dojo, or they gave you the WWE was there and they'd sign somebody. And the 1 year I was there, Kenny Omega got signed. Eric Rowan, who was Thorif at the time, he went to Japan, and then I got the scholarship to Harley School. So like debating on whether or not to move 8 hours from home. I remember sitting with Trevor and you know, drinking beer. He was drinking a Jack and Coke, and I'm like, I have a family, I have kids, you know, like I don't know. And he just looks at me and goes, it's your decision ultimately, but it's gonna be a big regret if you don't take it. You know, Harley is the greatest wrestler out there. And he didn't convince me to go, but he kind of, you know, urged me. And so when I went, and rest is history.
Did you pack up your family, or were you away from them when you were?
I was not with the mother of my kids at the time.
Okay.
I had a girlfriend, so we packed up and went. And then what I did was I arranged it so I could get the kids over summer and whatnot. So they'd come down with me for the summer and stuff. And I made it work. And when I moved back to Wisconsin, I actually got custody of them, and they lived with me. And the thing about my kids is all 4 of them, you know, my oldest she was 3 when I started wrestling, you know, and the rest were born when I was in wrestling. So to them, it's dad, you know, dad's going to work. That's all it was. It's like having, my daughter put it best, it's like having a door-to-door salesman for a dad, you know, a traveling businessman. And like, they laugh because they've met so many different people, and it's like, well, no, that's just so-and-so, you know, but their friends all like geek out and like, oh my God, you know that, you know what I mean? And like, but to them, it was just, you know, dad's going to work. This is what he does. And because I was able to do that, they're all now following their dreams, even though like my daughter's wants to be a special effects makeup artist. And that's not a guaranteed job anywhere, but that's a lot like professional wrestling. You don't have there's no guarantee you're going to get a contract. But she's busting her butt, and she has told me, you know, it's because of you, because you showed me you can do your dreams. So I'm going to work hard like you did, and I'm going to do it. And she's actually filming a movie right now. So she's doing an internship on a movie and doing really well. Yeah.
Yeah. Did she ever practice on you?
She actually, if you go back and watch Ring of Honor from Milwaukee, where Vincent rips my tooth out of my head, she made the tooth and she made the blood capsules. So that, because we couldn't really rip a tooth out of my head. So she made all that. And then she got a check from Ring of Honor. That was her first actual paid gig. So all the blood, and then he took all the pictures afterwards, covered in the blood and stuff. And that's all her work. Yeah. And he loved it. He's like, I need more. And she made more for him so he could do all these crazy, because he was just turning into the Vincent, you know, and he loved it. And it worked great. It came off on camera really good, and you couldn't tell.
Yeah. That's really cool, especially to not only her follow her dream, but be able to incorporate that dream into what you're doing is really unique. So you start with Adonis, you go to Harley Race. At what point do you decide that like it's time for me to like hit the roads and kind of just like start making my career at this?
After I want to say it was like 4 years at Harley's, I started being more of the trainer at the school than actual student. I was still learning, but it was just one of those things where it wasn't the same as when I moved, you know, and I was getting bookings, but in order to get with Harley, you couldn't wrestle for anybody in Missouri but Harley. And everything else was an 8-hour drive from Eldon. So, and Harley took off in the summertime. So the summertime, I'm driving to Arkansas, Texas, Wisconsin, Illinois. I'm driving these 8-hour, 16-hour trips to make these bookings. And I was like, this is just wearing on me. I miss my kids. I'm training kids now. I'm driving, I'm putting all these miles on. Like, Milwaukee's more of a central based area for bookings and whatnot. And that's where my family is and stuff. So I sat down with Harley and I wanted to make sure that I got his blessing, before I went anywhere. And I'd already done a couple tryouts with WWE. I'd done a couple tryouts with TNA, and I was kind of just, I want to go home. I miss my kids. I miss my family. And Harley gave me his blessing and I moved back home, and I'd still come in for him every once in a while and wrestle and stuff like that. But like, my career really took off when I moved back home, because now I was able to take lots of bookings and driving was easier, and, I could ramp up my schedule.
What was your character like at that point? Like, you're probably like at least 5 years in, maybe more.
At the time I was like 6 years in, I think. No, when I moved back home, no, I was about 9 years in, I think, when I moved back home.
Okay.
And I was doing a character called Dinty Moore. I was a lumberjack. And then when I was at Harley's, it transformed into I used to paint my face, and I was part of a tag team. We were the Doom Slayers. And when I moved home, I'm like, okay, I want to recreate my image. So I used my name, which is Matt Winchester, and I was going around as that. And a buddy of mine, actually, his name's Nick Colucci. He was working, first match on every card, and he was working there, all these green kids, and he just wasn't having fun. And here I am doing the main event of all these shows and stuff. And he goes, man, you look like you're having so much fun. I says, well, yeah, that's where I'm at. Like, I'm making money. Yeah. But like, I'm having fun, And he says, I want to have fun with you. What if we formed a tag team? I says, yeah, we can do that. And, I said, what are we going to call ourselves? He's like, well, what are we? I'm like, dude, all we do is we go to the bar, drink beer, and get into fights. Like, that's what we do. Like, that's what we were doing at the time, because we were traveling together. And he goes, that's it. We need to be, he's like, you love Brody. Let's be Bruisers. I'm like, yeah, we need more, And we didn't want to be the Beer City Bruisers, because we didn't want to be linked just to Milwaukee. And there's also a women's roller derby team called that. So we switched it to Beer City, because there's numerous beer cities throughout the country, which I found out traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I became Beer City Bruiser Matt Winchester. And then when I got to Ring of Honor and I did my tryout for Ring of Honor, they're like, drop the Matt Winchester, just be Beer City Bruiser, be like an old school. Because I was doing the throwback gimmick. And they're like, the Crusher wasn't the Crusher regular, he was the Crusher,
Mm-hmm.
Dick the Bruiser was just the Bruiser. So they're like, that's what you should do. So that's when I changed it.
Awesome. You mentioned bar fights. Do you have any stories of a time? Like, I've never been in a bar fight, but I don't go by the Beer City Bruiser, so that's kind of foreign to me. Do you have any like bar fight stories that pop into mind?
I have a lot, but I'll tell you one that it's almost unbelievable. There's two I can actually tell you that are almost unbelievable. The first one is we did a 4th of July show in like way up in the Northwoods of Wisconsin, and the promoter didn't have hotels; they were campsites. So it's like, oh, cool, we can go camping. And we had to do the parade one day, and then we had to do the show the next day. So after the parade and stuff, we go to the bar, and it's in a bowling alley type bar or whatever. We're all drinking, having a good time. And my buddy Jet Bennett, the guy got me into it, he used to do this rib where he'd say, hey, have you ever had a blue tidal wave? And what it was, he'd order you a shot of blue UV. You'd do the shot. He goes, there's the blue, here's a tidal wave, and he'd throw water in your face. Just common, haha, whatever. Well, on this particular instance, the water splashed onto a girl. So he tapped her on the shoulder, says, I apologize for that. That was meant for him. I didn't mean, no harm. She's like, yeah, no worries. Don't worry about it. Next thing you know, her boyfriend, who's just hammered, comes over to Jet and goes, why are you touching my girl? Why are you inappropriately touching her? Why are you throwing water on her? You're just trying to touch her and all that. And he's like, look, man. And he explained the situation. And he called me over, and I come over, and he goes, and he's like, round up the boys. Like, it's about to pop off, because behind the guy, he had a bunch of his drunk buddies behind them, and we could see them gathering. So we kind of gave the signal to the boys, like, hey, this is going to happen, you know. And the guy kept getting in Jet's face, and the rule is you never throw the first punch, because if you throw the first punch, you're the one that gets in trouble. You always react, you know. And Jet wasn't going to do it. So finally, the guy threw a punch. His buddy came running. I remember grabbing the guy by the throat and choke slamming him. And I just remember, and I looked at my other buddy, and my buddy goes, "That worked!" Like, holy crap! And so we get into this fight, and it gets calmed down. And the bar owner's like, "Hey, you guys are here tomorrow night. Can you just, you know, go back to the campsite? I'll give you a bunch of beer, you know." And we're like, "Yeah, sure." So we go back to the campsite, and Silas Young was there. He didn't come to us with the bar, but he was back at the campsite. So I walk up to Silas. I'm like, "Man, you're not going to believe what just happened." And as I say that, a car pulls in, does like a loop around the campsite, and then takes off. And we're both like, "Well, that was weird." And again, just joking, you know, talking stories and stuff. Next thing you know, about 7 cars pull in. It's the dudes from the bar, along with a bunch of their friends and all the girls that were with them. And they're all coming up, and they're like, "This is it. You know, now we're going to throw down. Like, you guys are all done, yada, yada, yada." He gets up in Silas's face, and Silas takes a stick that he was stoking the fire with. So it's flaming, and he's poking the guy in the chest going, "What are you going to do?" You know, and the next thing you know, it's wrestlers versus this town. And we're brawling left and right and just going at it. And this girl gets up in my face, and she shoves me. She's like, "What are you gonna do? Hit a girl?" I'm like, I don't hit women. I'm not gonna hit you." And she slaps me. I'm like, "I don't care. I'm not gonna touch you. Like, you're a woman, you know, I'm not gonna hit you." She shoves me again. My wife comes out of nowhere and shoulder checks this girl into a truck and leaves like this huge dent in the truck. And I go, "I'm not gonna touch you. She's gonna mess you up." Fight still happens. This girl that started the whole thing, that was the girl that my wife checked, she takes off into the woods. So all our girls are like, "Hell no, like, she's not getting away with it." And they take off after her. Next thing you know, the cops are there. They bring this girl back, and she's like, "I just need to apologize. It's that time of month, and I'm really moody. I didn't mean to start all this." And we're like, "What? You started this whole big thing because of that?" And so the cop says to the local, he arrested a bunch of the local guys, and then he told the ones he didn't arrest, "Look," and he looks at us as the wrestlers. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to be parked 20 minutes up the road. If this happens again, it'll take me," and he looks right at the wrestlers and goes, "It'll take me 20 minutes to get back here." And so they left, and we ended up drinking, having a good time. So that was the time we got into a fight with a town.
I don't know if you've ever seen the show Letterkenny.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds like a scene. Like, I can picture that happening in Letterkenny. So cool to know that kind of stuff actually happens.
Yeah, and when it got all done, I remember we were driving home the next day, and we're like, "No one's gonna believe this. This is, you know." But the thing is, you ask any person that was there, it's the exact same. It's never changed, you know. And it was funny because it was actually, I think, the 15-year anniversary of it, because a girl that I helped train, that was her day of her first match, was the day we got in the fight. So she posted on there, you know, "Happy anniversary, wrestleversary me," and she posted different pictures. I was like, "Wait a minute, that means we got into a fight with a town 15 years ago." All right, cool.
Amazing. Yeah, that you're delivering top tier content for
Thank you.
Yeah. So you mentioned you're kind of doing that. At what point does Ring of Honor come and present itself? Like, how far are you into your career before you get that opportunity?
I'm pretty far in. Kevin Steen had come in to the Midwest a couple times, and they always either had me tag with him or work against him. And he was telling me, like, Ring of Honor does these tryouts. Like, you should do these tryouts. And I'm about 13 years in wrestling at this point in time. And Steve Carino, who's a really good friend of mine, he kind of became a mentor of mine after I met him when I was like 2 years into wrestling. And I always tell him the biggest mistake he did was give me his phone number, because I just bugged him all the time. And he would tell me that, like, Ring of Honor would love this character. They got the tryouts, and then Kevin Kelly started on me too. And I'm like, you know, I did the tryouts. I went. I was never the guy. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things where it was just like I didn't want to do it again. I was kind of happy being a big fish in a small pond at the time. And my father-in-law would always be on me. go do that tryout, And at the time, my tag team partner he took time off the business because he wanted to focus on his kids and stuff. And I'd blown my ACL out, so I decided to go have ACL surgery. And my father-in-law ends up passing away. And in his will, he left money aside for me. But the only way I could use it was to pay for the Ring of Honor tryout, pay for a flight, pay for a rental car, and pay for a hotel. That was the only way I could have that money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got cleared from my ACL surgery. I was doing some indie shows, and I looked at my wife and go, I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this tryout. But I'm not going to be a guy at the tryout. I'm going to be the guy. I'm going to go and I'm going to be the guy at this tryout. And so I went in 2014, went and did the tryout. It was a 2-day tryout. And Will Ferrara and I wrestled a match at the tryout. And at the end of the match, they do the thing where they ask everyone there, if their TV was tomorrow, would you put them on TV? We were the only ones of that camp and any camp before that got yeses from every single judge. And then once the tryout was over, Hunter, Delirious, the booker, pulled me aside and says, we're going to put you in the top prospect tournament. Keep an eye on your email. You killed it. You were the guy this tryout. Mm-hmm. And that's how it all led to me getting there.
Awesome. So I guess the motivation of making sure that your father-in-law wishes were kind of met, I'm sure that had a big impact on that too.
Huge impact. Yep.
And I'm sure the talent and experience, a lot of people you see going to tryouts and stuff, they're young and they're kind of trying to make it, but you've been in the business for 14 years. You've been in this learning tree of Harley Race. I'm sure everything that you did in your career kind of led up to that moment. Where do you go next in the prospect tournament? At what point do you realize oh, I'm here, I've got my contract, this is big?
It took me a while to realize that because I was just having fun, traveling and doing everything. It was July of 2015, I want to say, is when it kind of struck me hey, I'm doing something right. And that was, we were in Minnesota. And if you remember War Machine, what are the Viking Raiders? They were the getting ready to be tag team champions. So at the time, they were just feeding tag teams to them to eat them up. And in Minnesota, they didn't have a tag team to go against them. So Hunter came up to us and said, I'm going to put you and Silas together because you guys are both from Milwaukee. Your characters hate everybody. So why wouldn't you guys like each other? And we're just going to throw shit against the wall and see if it sticks. We're okay. We had such really good chemistry with War Machine. I did the frog splash for the first time that night and all that when I got back, that was when they offered me my contract. Mm-hmm. And I remember calling my wife going, holy crap. I thought I was just going to be, a per night guy or, whatever for the rest of my life. Cause that's always what I've been. I'm now they're offering me this contract, I called up Harley. I called up Trevor. I said, I don't know what to do. Cause you know what I mean?
Yeah,
they both said the same thing. Sign it. It doesn't matter what it says, sign it. Cause then once you have one, you can build off of it. And so I signed it and it still took some time to sink in. You know what I mean? Man, I have a contract, it was crazy.
I'd like to go back just a little bit and ask what made you decide 15 years into your career that it was time to try a frog splash?
I've done the frog splash before. So at Harley's school, I did a moonsault one time at camp. And Harley says, you got that out of your system? I says, yeah. He goes, yeah, now you'll never hit it again. You're too big. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I would do a frog splash. And then he would always say the same thing. Yeah, you're too big. So I just kind of put it on the shelf, okay, I can do it, whatever. So we're in the match with War Machine and Eric Rowe or Eric, whatever, Ray Rowe is what I know him as. He goes, man, do you do anything off the top rope? It would be so awesome. We did this. It'd be a great false finish if you hit me with something up. And I says, actually, yeah, I do a frog splash, but I haven't done it in 10 years. However long. I don't know how long it's been. He's like, do it. If you kill me, you kill me. It's going to look good. I'm like, okay. So I ended up doing it and the place went crazy. And when after that match, we were scheduled then for TV the next week, and they rearranged the cards so that we could work them on TV. So Ray does, you have to do that frog splash. It's TV now. You know, it's not just a house show with DVD. Like, hit it. I'm like, okay. So I hit it, and then when we watched it back, they replayed it 2 or 3 times. And I was like, okay, there's something here. This is why I understood now what Harley meant. Like, you don't need it unless unless it means something. And you don't just do it to do it. And so now it meant something, and I was the only bigger guy doing it on the roster. And I didn't fit the normal Ring of Honor mold when he thought of Ring of Honor, but I would do stuff that would throw people off, like, holy cow, he can do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things.
Awesome. Well, I think I have a new thing I'm trying out. I have another podcast called Take the Pictures.
Okay.
It's like a wrestling podcast where like the guest brings pictures on and we kind of go through them. I'm going to do like a mini segment of that. I have some pictures that I've stalked from your Facebook. I apologize ahead of time.
Oh, that's fine.
I'm going to pull them up and then we can go through them because I think a lot of what will happen next and maybe a little in the past will kind of come up with there. So I'm going to play this.
Why don't you take a picture? It'll last longer.
I turn my camera on. I cut my fingers on the way.
All righty. So, yeah, basically, picture comes up. If you have a story, share it. I found this is a really cool way to like get stuff that you would never talk about because it's not like on like the A to B point of like you getting there. So, yeah, I guess we'll start with this one. I think this was the last one, but I think we'll just go in reverse.
Sure. That's from a show. It's called Totally Tool Wrestling, and you had to come up with just funny characters. So what I am there is I am Bruiser Brody. I am the illegitimate child of the parents on the Brady Bunch, or the mother on the Brady Bunch, and Bruiser Brody. And so I was a hardcore dancing machine, and I came out to the Brady Bunch theme. And the way the finish of this match happened was I was wrestling actually a magician, a guy who was like a magician. And the way it ended was somebody started playing music and a disco ball randomly came over the ring. And so the locker room cleared out. And instead of being a giant brawl, it just turned into a giant discotheque hosted by Bruiser Brody.
That's the greatest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Was
it
the
was a great outfit.
Was the magician trained or was it just a magician?
It was a trained wrestler. He wasn't doing magic. It was like, pick a card. Is this your card? That kind of stuff. Like,
Okay.
He was horrible at every trick, but it was just funny because it was actually making reference to that one guy that was in WWE for the one match, Phantasma or whatever his name was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we were just kind of poking fun at that. So all the magic tricks were like just horrible magic tricks, and then it would end up with me like doing something like a big boot or something funny.
Yeah. How do you like? How long did it take you to come up with that? Because that's very intricate. Like Bruiser Brody, like that. There's a backstory there.
That was about a case of beer in. Me and my buddy just drinking beer, and actually we were watching wrestling, and then we turned the TV off. The Brady Bunch was on, and I was drunk enough where it was like, wait a minute, here it is. This is a sign, and how it is. You're drinking with your buddy and just throwing stupid stuff around, and this is the incarnation of that. I went and I bought all that gear is all from Goodwill. That's actually a women's jacket because I thought it'd be funnier if I wore a tight fitting jacket. And then the wig is a Halloween wig, which actually lasted for a few years circulating through different locker rooms where different guys would wear it. And I didn't know that until it got lost at some show. But yeah, it was around for a few years after that. The jacket got burned. I know that. And the gear, I think I sold to somebody.
So it sounds like you made a profit off of.
Oh yeah, definitely made a profit.
That's amazing, and that's also why I love wrestling because stuff like this can exist.
And this is actually on the outside of a bar. What you see on the corrugated stuff, that's a bar. So do the match and then right away right to the bar.
Amazing.
I love that story. Bruiser Brody taking Carol Brady down to Chinatown.
Yeah.
I love it.
She made her say huh.
Yeah.
He made her say huss.
All right. This next photo is you mentioned it earlier. You had some like interactions with WWE.
Yep.
This was I don't remember what their I remember the team. I don't remember exactly what their name is.
They're the Shane twins, but in here they're Gemini, and if you don't look where my hands are, that's where Nova is, Simon Dean.
Mhm.
But this was actually SmackDown. This was Velocity, which was filmed before SmackDown in Charlotte. I drove the 14 hours from Milwaukee to Charlotte to do this booking. I did Charlotte and I think Greenville. Were the two shows, or it was Greenville, Charlotte, whatever. But this is there, and this was after I'd done the Simon Dean debut thing, and Nova actually was in charge of talent. It bounced between him and Tommy Dreamer. No, it was Dreamer at the time. I'm sorry, it was Dreamer. But Dreamer was so impressed with what I did with Simon the first time, and Nova wanted to do more with me. And Nova was managing Gemini and thought I could help them out. So I actually end up doing this match. And then what's funny is the guy that I'm tagging with now runs Harley's Wrestling School. He left Charlotte. He was trained by George South, and he moved to Missouri to train with Harley, and then met his wife and stuff like that. Now he runs the school. So I'll bring this up every once in a while whenever I drive past the building or whatever.
Yeah.
Or this picture comes up, and we both kind of reminisce.
What a learning tree to start with George and then go to Harley. Like,
yeah.
That's
there's a reason he's running that school now. You know?
Yeah. This was like, I don't mean to make you feel like old, but like this was when I first started watching wrestling. Simon Dean coming out on the Segway, and like Bobby, I think him and Bobby Lashley had that feud, and there was like a hamburger eating contest, if I remember correctly. So I probably saw this as a kid. Cool. Very, at least for me, underrated time of wrestling was the SmackDown at that time.
Yeah, SmackDown was definitely the superior brand at that time.
So we've got this one. You mentioned Steve Carino a few times. So at what point in your career is this? Obviously, gear is different.
This is right when I got back from Harley's. That's the gear I used to wear at Harley's, but you can see in the shoulder, I'm and how baggy it is. I've lost a bunch of weight. I'd known Carino at this point for years, and anytime he came into the Milwaukee area, he always wanted to wrestle with me. And then this was my first show where I actually moved back to Wisconsin, and he was coming in. He's like, "Oh, I want to wrestle you now. Now, see what you learned from Harley. You know what I mean, and all that." I'm like, "All right, cool. Like, let's do it." And God, we wrestled. I've wrestled Steve so many times. This is where he would do the oil check, where he'd put you in a abdominal stretch, and he'd take his thumb and stick it up your butt, and then he'd do it twice, and the third time you grab his hand and turn it and put it in his mouth. So he was doing that at the time. He was all excited to show me it, and then he actually stuck his thumb in my butt because he's Steve.
FaceTime video.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So it's also cool, like Steve, like at least not as much as he used to, but like with PWF, like you two are both very involved in the foundation of the North Carolina wrestling scene. You're training like the next people. So it's cool that you guys have this history, and now you're both in a place where I think he's from Philadelphia, you're from Milwaukee, and here you are. Pretty cool.
Yeah. And what's funny too about this picture too is Colby wrestled in the undercard.
Really?
Under a mask. Yeah. This is I've known Colby almost his whole life, because you mentioned PWF, and Colby's doing such amazing things out there with them. But and Steve too. But yeah, Colby's on this show. He wrestled, I want to say he was the Black Tiger Mask for a little bit or something like that. I don't remember. But it was a little lucha gimmick he was doing. So that way he could hide his face, because I think he was real young when he did it.
Yeah.
But I remember he was on this run of shows, because that building's no longer there. That building's torn down. But I remember the building and him being there.
Those look like some pretty low hanging seats.
Oh, very low. Those lights got hit all the time. Those walls were fragile. Like, we were there for a good 8-9 years. and then there was wrestling before that too. And it was the Knights of Columbus is what it was. And those ceiling tiles have been replaced numerous times, and lights have been replaced and all that. Yeah, it was a good time. That bill, I remember that building a lot.
So wrestling and like Knights of Columbus, Key Club, like all of those, like Elks Lodge, like it feels like they kind of go hand in hand. Is there like a community society like that has the best venues for wrestling, or is it just kind of depends on the town?
It depends on the town. If you're talking like little buildings like that, Knights of Columbus has been pretty good. American Legions are pretty good. Armories, for some reason, as much as everyone wants to run armories, there's no air conditioning ever in armories. So they're just super hot. I always wrestle in armories in the summertime too, which is weird, but it's just roasting hot. Yeah, but it usually depends on the town and how highly they think of whatever kind of club it is, you know. But I've noticed nights are pretty good usually.
Awesome. We'll go to this next picture. And this is kind of what I was talking about with Ring of Honor. That's kind of what prompted me to switch this was this match that you had with the current New Japan heavyweight champion.
Yeah, this was in Toronto. This was actually the World Awards tour. So we were actually in, where were we the night before? It was 2 nights before. I think Detroit is where we were. I don't remember, but we had it. We did a 6-man where it was me, Malonis, and Silas against Los Signabras. So Naito, Evil, and Sonata. And Naito was worried about this match at first. That's why they had us do the 6-man first. And then after the 6-man, he pulled me aside and he shook my hand, was excited. Mm-hmm. And so we get to, I remember being in Toronto and doing the match. And, oh, it's there. There's Royal Oak, Michigan's where we were the night before. But anyways, we went to Toronto and it was me and him in the singles, and he wanted to do so much stuff, and it was so fun. And I ended up giving him a DVD on the apron. I was real worried about it. You know, you don't want to drop one of the top guys. Like, he was their rising star, you know, at this time.
Yeah.
And I took care of him, all that. And I get in the back, and BJ Whitmer walks up and goes, "Hey man, you need to shake Naito's hand, give him a hug and thank him and all that." And this is why. He goes, he bumped and sold more for you than he's done anybody else in the last couple of months. And that shows that in their culture, that's respectful.
Yeah.
So when he came, you know, I thanked him and all that, and he really liked it. And then we ended up working the Briscoes and Lowell. And then later on down the line, I ended up wrestling him again. And then because of this match, I get added to the Honor Rising tour, and I wrestle Hiroki Goto the first night. And Hiroki took spots from this match for our match, and including the DVD on the apron, because he saw that I didn't hurt Naito. And he says, Naito says, "You good, we do lots." And which was a big thing to me, because I always looked up to Goto. I thought he was he still is an amazing wrestler. And I actually studied him before I got into Ring of Honor. So it was really an honor to have Naito, because of this match, give me kind of the props, and then Goto give me the respect. And then we did the thing, and it was great.
That's really cool. Friend of this podcast, Mark James, was talking about working. He had a match recently against some talent from Mexico, and he was talking about like not so much the challenge, but like it's a different way to test your skill when you're in the ring with somebody that doesn't speak the same language of you, but you do speak the same language of wrestling. What is it like being in the ring with somebody that like you have very limited communication with, but you both have like this shared experience of wrestling? It's
amazing how little cues mean so much. It's kind of like sign language, you know, and that's why I teach at the schools. So many guys plan everything now, you know. Well, when you get in a match like this, you can plan stuff, but like could get lost in translation or whatever. It's more the cues to each other in the ring and what you're looking for, you know. And like you said, wrestling's a universal language. So like, you know, you say clothesline, it's the same thing. You say this, it's the same thing. So like but it does push you as a performer. I tried to make him laugh just to see if he'd understand some of my jokes. So like since we're in Canada, I tried to get the crowd to chant USA, and then when I started to get, if you watch the DVD, it's funny because you'll see him kind of look at me with a confused look in his face, and I'm trying to get him to say that. So then he turns and he starts saying Japan, and the crowd starts chanting Japan, and you see him start to giggle because he, and it was just one of those things you can't tell, and it was rough translation, but he kind of saw where I was going and picked up on it. So
that's amazing. Kind of a sidebar. Has there ever been a moment that like in the ring where it's like taking everything you have just to like not die laughing and then like keep going and continue the match, but like on the inside, like it's like when you're in class and you're not supposed to laugh, but it's the only thing that you can do to like not burst out.
Oh, I've had so many of those. Anytime I share the ring with Steve Carino, it's that way. Just the stuff he says or the stuff he'll do. Just makes me, I don't have any off the top of my head. But Steve's one of those guys that just, he'll crack a joke. CW Anderson's that way too, which is funny because they're best friends, and it kind of takes, and I know why Steve did it to me early in my career, was kind of relieve the pressure because you're under a lot of pressure, and now he just does it because he's him. And I catch myself doing that now too, where you tell little jokes or you get each other to do something to try to pop each other.
Amazing. Yeah, I've always wondered that. We had TJ Boss on one time, and he was talking about splitting his pants in the middle of the ring and just like the kind of having to like just focus on the match and nothing else because it's like all you can really think about. And then we had Jay Malachi on, and he had a spot where they did like the ECW throw the chairs in the ring.
Yeah.
You can see Lucky Ali under that, just like visibly laughing under like, because I don't really expected the ring to fill up. So it's always cool, like, because it's any profession. Like we've all been at work or at school and had to like take every ounce of energy we've had not to like break. So.
I had one where I made Barbarian and Warlord break. It was right after my father-in-law passed away. It was actually the show after. And these two are awesome dudes. They're like, sorry about your father-in-law. You guys be up on the match. You guys can take the match. It's the least we can do. It's like, no, the promoter wants you guys up. And they're like, no, please, we want you to. And like, I whenever I see them, I always thank them because that meant a lot. Because I wasn't really in the right headspace, But there was a spot where Barbarian gives me a slam, and I thought I shit myself. And so I looked at him. I'm like, I think I shit myself. And he turns and he tags Warlord. You hear him say, he shit himself. And Warlord come in and go, tag out. So I roll over, I tag my partner. I'm like, I think I shit myself. And he's like, what? And you see Warlord and my partner, they're all three of them are giggling now. And I'm like, how do I check? Like, so I roll on the floor and I kind of put my butt under the ring and I stick my hand down. And I pull my hand back. And I'm like, oh, thank God, just a wet fart. So when I got back in the ring, I told all of them, hey, man, don't worry, it was just a wet fart. It was just a wet fart. And they ended up starting laughing again. And like, that was just me being in the moment. And I was so emotional that whole week where I could just kind of let it go. And we get in the back and Barbarian hugs me and goes, you crazy. You are crazy. I'm like, well,
Has that ever happened in the ring?
To me, no, but I know people it has happened to.
What's the most common move that happens?
Backdrops, usually on backdrops or spine busters. Yeah,
I can see that. Okay.
So like somebody like CJ or CW Anderson or Art Anderson, you think they've got like a list like of people that they've made shit themselves with their spine busters?
Yeah. Well, they have to.
We have to have CW Anderson on, if not just to ask that question.
Just I'll see him in 2 weeks. I'll see him and Arn. I'll ask him.
Okay, please do. We'll have to have you back on for like a guest just to report on how often that happens.
Pooping incidents in wrestling.
So a little bit of a change of picture here. Kind of speaks for itself. For those listening, I'll put the pictures and link down below. But just two people covered in a crazy amount of blood. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
So this was the last match I had in Wisconsin. I actually moved the next day to Missouri, and I wrestled Abdullah the Butcher. So this is the aftermath of wrestling Abdullah the Butcher. And the guy, the referee on my right, his name is JP. And he wanted to do stuff too. So like after it all happened, we had to take this picture. But if you notice, so I made the mistake of watching the Thrill Seekers versus the Heavenly Bodies from Smoky Mountain, where Chris Jericho uses a surgical blade and gets the color. And they stopped the match due to blood. So I was like, surgical blade. And my girlfriend at the time worked in the ER. So I had her steal me essentially a scalpel. And so when I gigged, and I still have the scar here on my head, but when I gigged, it just started going. And if you look, my singlet's red, but if you look like in my chest area, you can see where it puddled. And I had to wash that singlet 6 times to get all the blood out. There's a point where Abby throws me into the wall and I hit the wall and I bounce off, and there's literally a blood imprint of me on this white wall. And there's a picture. I don't know if it's on my Facebook or not, but it was a picture where he picks my head up. I'm laying on a table. He picks my head up, and you see the blood drips from my head, but there's a pool, and you see one of the drips hitting the pool, and it looks like the 3-2-1 contact. I'm old, so that old water drop hitting that.
Yeah.
And we had to clean ourselves up and stuff, and the building thought it was all fake. The blood and stuff. They thought it was ketchup. So we lost this building because of this match, because they thought we stole their ketchup and destroyed their bathroom. They didn't know it was our blood. And this is also about, I want to say it's about a half hour after the show, because I couldn't get the bleeding to stop. And then, so I wrapped my head up and went to the bar.
So you lost because of ketchup. Do you think if they realized it was blood too? But I love to think of a world where they're like, oh, it's just blood. Okay, you guys can come back.
Yeah, and I said that to the promoter because he called me. He was giggling. He thought it was funny. Because I have other photos too where the photographer just took pictures of the bathroom after we cleaned up. It looks like a crime scene. But I was talking to the promoter. I go, wait, they think it's like, they honestly think it's ketchup? He goes, yeah, they think they don't want us to be there because they think we stole from the building. And I said the same thing. I said, well, what if they found out it was blood and we didn't steal anything? Like, are we okay to go back? And he's like, well, I guess as long as we don't steal anything, because they sound more upset that we stole something, which we didn't.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. I'm like, do you want me to, drive back from Missouri and show him the scar on my forehead? And what do you want me to do? He's like, no, I found another building. And the building, actually, I wrestled Steve Carino, is the building they went to. And then they were there for years after.
Amazing. So you kind of, a butterfly effect, kind of went there. I've heard a lot about like, don't lose the building, like in like pre-show, like speeches and stuff like that. What is like the most deserved, we lost the building? You have a story where it's like, yeah, they definitely should have taken the building away.
I know there's a couple times in Milwaukee where we've done stuff and we're surprised they didn't lose a building. And it was because the promoter was at odds with the building owner over rent or something like that. So he was purposely trying to lose the building. And I think the owner was kind of hard-headed too and didn't want to, so we just kept pushing the envelope till there was a point where we were doing like flaming tables and stuff like that, like just to see how far we could go. But I've never, I try to be as respectful as I can to the building. You know what I mean? I've met building owners that are dicks, but it's like, hey, it's your building, I do hate when building owners step over the bounds where like, I've heard people lose a building because they're like, oh, we didn't know it'd be that violent. It's professional wrestling. What were you expecting to come in? You know what I mean? Like, oh, this building doesn't want us back because, they thought it was too violent. And I'm like, what do you, there was no blood. There was just a straight up wrestling match, And then I know a guy who lost a building because he didn't get familiar names that were currently on TV. You know, like he wanted like John Cena and Undertaker and all that. And promoters like, I don't know if the promoter promised him that, you know what I mean? And whatever, but it's just like, that's not going to happen, man. Like there's no money in the world to get these guys here. So I've heard stuff like that.
Amazing. What was it like working with Abdullah the Butcher?
We didn't talk and we just beat each other up. We never got in the ring. He was in character around everybody but me, you know, because he believes in kayfabe so much. And it was a cool experience. What I really liked about it was my first time I was able to kind of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon myself to Bruiser Brody, because Abby and Brody had such a violent feud. And I got to ask him questions about Brody, and he told me Brody's stories. So that was really cool. I don't know if it's because I wrestled him or I was wrestling him, and that's why he was nice to me, because he was a dick to like a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. I did get checked after this. I'm hepatitis free. You literally had to get a Missouri license where you get your blood work. So like everyone's like, oh my God, you bled with Abby. I'm like, no, trust me. I was tested every 6 months in fact, I just got my blood work today. You know, because of wrestling, for license and commissions and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I don't know. He's a weird cat, you know, but it was cool. Cause like I said, I could tie myself to Brody now. You know, I'm literally one person away from Brody. And then like I got to wrestle on Cork and Hall. It was kind of the same feeling, like, cool. This is, you know, Brody was here, you know, Foley was here. Foley's another big fan. I'm a big fan of Foley too. So like that again with Abby was like, cool. I have a connection to Foley now.
What was Japan like for you? Or like how did the opportunity present itself, and what was it like?
The opportunity came because of Ring of Honor. Best time of my life. It's definitely in the top 5 of my all-time things to do in my career. I remember getting over there, and it had always been my dream to wrestle in Japan. I was with Kevin Kelly. We were at breakfast, and Kevin knew how important this was to me. Because he's a mentor of mine, so I'd open up to him. And I said, you know, Kevin, I want to make a lasting impression. Like, I want to make an impact. You know, like, what suggestions do you have? You know, like, and he's like, you know, you got your character, you're gonna be fine. I said, yeah, but I want to, you know what I mean? Like, huge. He goes, think of your idols. What did they do? I said, well, Brody would come to the ring with the chain and swinging it around, and people would run away from him. And Gordy would come out and literally like hop the rail and chase people. He's like, you want to do something impactful? Think of something like that. So coming to the ring, what I came up with is I'd spit the beer in the air, and people would start to run away from me. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And I got to work it to where I learned, like, if I'd put the beer can up to my lips, the crowd would come up and they'd get out of their seats. And then if I put it back down, they'd laugh and sit back. And then, you know what I mean? And like, after the match, I talked to Kevin. He's like, you just made your impact. You just made your entrance just like them. You know, every time you're here, do that. So every time I was in Japan, like when I do my Japan stuff, I'd always do that. So the next night and all that, I did that, and it was amazing.
You're a bigger guy. How is the bathroom situation in Japan?
I hit my head on everything. My feet have hung off my bed, but they have bidets there, and I never used a bidet before. And now they own my own house, a bidet is on the list. They had like heated bidets, and it was amazing. It was the greatest thing ever. And like it made up for all the tiny showers and stuff where, you know, you have to wash a body part at a time. You know, I'd also take pictures too with the people. Whenever they come up to me, I'd always say I do the Keanu Reeves where I wouldn't touch anybody. My hands would be at the side. And because they all look underage. And I remember one lady going, well, this is my mom. My mom's, you know, your age. I'm like, that there's no way, you know? So everyone's so short and small and so young. But yeah, it was the greatest time of my life. I put up with it. You know, I have a student going to Japan, Jack, JAC. Yeah. And so I told him, I says, hey man, get some aspirin. He's like, why? I said, you're going to hit your head a lot. You know, everything is small. And he's like, okay. I'm like, you're gonna, sleep on the floor some nights. It'll be more comfortable than on the bed because you're just gonna hang off the bed.
That's
Today,
incredible. Yeah.
it's your lucky day. You were speaking to two gentlemen who are bidet owners and
We,
who also have the hookup.
All right.
We have a podcast called the Bidet Boys.
Okay.
It doesn't have anything to do with the actual public. We watch bad movies and talk about them. We actually have a bidet sponsor. So
I love it.
We have a promo code. If you want a bidet,
We can make this happen for you.
we can
This
hook you
could
up.
be reality.
I'll probably have to hit you up. I got to convince the wife first. She's
Yeah.
not. She's not. And I told her, I said, it'll change your life. Trust me.
Yeah,
It goes on your existing toilet. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Okay.
my wife loves it.
I can't wait to watch this back and just when you say bidet, just watch both of our eyes just light up.
Well, I like how you're doing podcasts about bad movies. My parents owned a video store when I was growing up. So anytime we get promos of bad movies that my mom didn't want to watch, me and my brother had to watch them and tell her how many copies to bring into the store because we think it was rent or not. So I've seen a lot of bad B movies, and
We might have to have you
Are we
on.
looking? I was going to say, are we looking at a Bruiser Brody Bidet Boys collab podcast? An episode real quick. You bring your worst movie that you love, and we'll give it a peep.
I got plenty of them.
Some stinkers.
Oh yeah, I got plenty of them. I discovered trauma because of that particular task. So
You gotta
Amazing.
set this up. This is great. Bidets and bad movies. I like this guy.
As being like your parents owning a video store, was that like being a wrestling fan? I know a lot of people have like the VHS and the tapes. Or did you like just like oh, I'm taking this home with me, or like as soon as they got the new WrestleManias, was that like a gateway for you to consume wrestling?
it was. I wasn't allowed to watch wrestling when I was younger because my brother ended up putting his elbow through the wall because he was trying to be Macho Man, and so my mom banned it, so we'd have to sneak it. By the time we got to the video store, my mom kind of came around to like, okay, I can't prevent you guys from doing this. So like, again, she had to have somebody. She didn't watch wrestling, so she had to have somebody view it to see how many copies to bring in, And so that was always me and my brother. And so I'd always tell her, I'll bring in 2 copies, and then it'd be 1 copy for the store and 1 copy would always be rented, quote unquote. But it would usually be between me and my friends, passing because we used to tape trade.
That's amazing. That's kind of
I used to do all this stuff too. Like we used to get, because where I grew up, it was AWA obviously, but like on ESPN, you could watch Texas, you could watch Mid-Atlantic, stuff like that. And then when by the time the video store came around, it was WCW and WWF. So like I used to bring them both in, because I was telling my mom, and the area was primarily WWF, but like I remember guys, my friends and stuff would always come in and be like, oh man, you're getting that WCW stuff. That's awesome. You know what I mean? So like I got to kind of introduce it to a little town.
That's pretty cool. You were like the plug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was definitely the center of the hub for the tape trading. And I was, because I was a Brody fan, I always wanted to watch Japanese and Puerto Rican wrestling. So I would always tape trade whatever I could get from Coliseum at the time to get, FMW, IWA, New Japan, All Japan. And then my buddies would geek out because then I get that and then I could do stuff with them. And,
Amazing.
So I'm old. I tape trade. It was VHS tapes. They had the big old boxes,
Yeah. It's something like having to rewind before you can watch something. It just makes it worth it that much more. Like it's a lot easier to turn off. Like you can turn off something on Netflix and like get a heartbeat. Once you put that tape in, like you're in it for the ride. So
yep. And that's why you don't talk because you can't pause it too many times. You'll ruin the tape.
Exactly. You mentioned your mom saying you weren't allowed to watch wrestling. With this picture up, it's just kind of funny. Like I wonder if she could see this at the time She'd be like, "See, I told you."
She's actually one of my biggest fans now.
Amazing.
She caught me watching wrestling because I used to have a room in the basement and it had the old black and white TV. And I forget what it was on Saturday night's main event, but I was jumping on my bed and she opened the door and it was like, oh, hey, she would have thought I was watching porn or something, which is a funny story too. Cause I used to call the 909, the 1-900-909-9900. And then my parents got the bill and they were mad because it was a 900 number. And then my dad, I said, no, it's not sex line. It's not a sex line. And so I told my dad, just call it. And he called it. And obviously it was Mean Gene. And he looked at me with like a look of like relief, but disappointment, like, okay, son, I guess. But they're both my biggest fans now. They love it. My mom wants me to stop now because I'm older and I've had a couple surgeries, but she's still a big fan. They one time when we were in Vegas, I brought them out there for the Ring of Honor TV and pay-per-view. And we ended up staying a couple days later so I could spend some time with my parents. And we were walking down the strip and somebody stopped me to get an autograph. And we kept going. My mom's like, that person knows you? I'm like, yeah, they're a fan of Ring of Honor. And she's like, oh, wait, like you don't know them like outside. I'm like, Mom, I've never met them before in my life. It's a fan. And to her, that was like the coolest thing,
Of course, yeah. Yeah. That's always cool to like show your parents like on the biggest stage what you do. And
yeah.
Let's go to this next. I forgot what these pictures are because they went in reverse. So we're just gonna I think this is the last picture that we have, but you had the honor of playing the fake Bray Wyatt. Can you just walk us through like how you got selected for that? What was it like working with Bray, and is there anything else that comes to mind with that time?
So at the time, John Cone, who was a referee at Harley's, he was in talent development for WWE. He's still there now. I've been doing dates with Ring of Honor, and I had just gotten the contract offer, but I hadn't signed it yet. And I got a phone call from John Cone because I knew him from Harley's, and he goes, hey, he always called me Dinty because that was my gimmick name down there. He goes, hey, Dinty, you still fat? I said, well, yeah, he's like, you're like 300 pounds? I said, yeah. He goes, you still got a beard? I said, yeah. He goes, you want to do Raw and SmackDown, pay X amount of dollar, all that? I said, yeah, sure. He says, okay, you're booked. So I'm like, that was weird. You know what I mean? Like, oh, maybe they're bringing Simon Dean back. I don't know. It was just weird.
Yeah.
So I'm a big Bray fan. And I get there and I'm friends with Joe Henning from Harley's day. So, I check in and do all that. I'm talking to Joe and Bray Wyndham, as he called them, and Bo and all of them. They all hung out together. They're all boys. Bray was Joe's son's godfather, and Joe is one of Bray's kids' godfather. So like before I knew what I was doing, I got to meet him and talk to him and share stories. You know what I mean? And that's when John Cone came over and he goes, oh, good. You found Bray. And Bray's like, oh, he's going to do it. And I'm just sitting there going like, I'm going to do what? They're like, yeah, we want you. You're going to be the, fake Bray Wyatt. And like, they had to stand next to each other and they took pictures and they're like, okay, yeah, this will work. And they had to get they had to lengthen my beard and I obviously had to wear a wig. And then that shirt is one of his shirts that I still actually have. And then they had to go out and buy pants that he had. So I had the pants. And this was when he was feuding with Roman Reigns. So the whole thing was when this picture was taken is the music hits and I walk out as Bray. So I got to wear the jacket. I got to have the lantern. You know what I mean? I got to do the whole thing. And I walk out and Roman comes up. Superman punches me, then rips off the wig. And oh my God, it's not Bray. He turns around, there's Bray. So that was like the whole thing. And when we're walking through it and stuff, like they asked me if I would be comfortable taking a bump on the ramp. I'm like, yeah. They're like, we'll make sure you get paid extra for it. I'm like, yeah, I'll take a bump on the ramp. And so if you watch it, I take a bump on the ramp. I got paid really well for that. And then the next night, all I had to do was just walk out with Bray or walk out to distract Roman. But because of this, I got to know Bray and I got to talk to him and text him and bounce ideas. And when Vinny became Vincent in Ring of Honor, I and he knew Bray also, so the three of us would come up with ideas to get that whole thing.
Mhm.
So Bray was awesome to hang out with and just really cool guy. But anyways, when I was there, I asked them if you want me to do matches and stuff like that. They're like, no, if you want, we'll hook you up with a tryout. And I was like, no. And these were filmed on Monday, Tuesday. That Wednesday is when I signed my Ring of Honor contract.
Wow, small world. Like I
Yeah.
love how all random these pictures seem, but if I'm pretty sure you could probably trace a line through all of them that we've covered.
And
which is-
he wanted this picture. This picture was actually a producer's taking it on his phone. He sent it to me, and then WWE posted it on their Instagram, and then it was on his Instagram also. And then I obviously shared it throughout my socials. So like this picture was his idea, and he staged it and everything because he wanted to make it look really cool. And if you look, like people know this is just weird, but my right arm is up and his left arm's up, so it's supposed to be like a mirror image of his back facing a mirror.
Mhm.
So I always thought it was cool. I don't know. I like the artsy type stuff and like getting inside his mind and hearing him think about that stuff and how he blocked this out. It always brings me back to how creative he was. And I only got to experience a little bit of it in this moment. You know what I mean?
Awesome. Well, that concludes our portion of Take the Pictures. I'm going to play the video real quick.
Why don't you take a picture? It'll last longer.
I turn my camera on. I cut my fingers on the way.
All right. So you've been very generous with your time. I think we're on like an hour and 20 minutes of this. We typically like to end with kind of a speed round of random questions. So if you're up for it, we're just going to throw you questions that we haven't thought of until they come out of our mouth.
Okay.
I'll go first. And what is your favorite place to get cheese curds?
Culver's or the fair, any county fair in Wisconsin.
There's a
Fondest memory of a
Culver's.
cheat.
Oh,
Go ahead.
What's that?
there's a Culver's close to us in Apex.
Okay.
It's a game changer.
Fondest memory of a cheeseburger.
Of cheeseburger?
Yeah.
Oh, like little cheeseburger. Oh, I love cheeseburger. He's my day one at Ring of Honor. Him and Will Ferrara. We all signed around the same time. He was my first feud. My favorite quick story with him is on the Jericho Cruise, the first one. We used a body slam as a finish. He body slammed me, and that's how he pinned me. And we were just so happy we could do it. And Hunter was so happy, and it was just a good time. But I love Burger. In fact, I was talking to him yesterday because we share training tips. Because he has his worldwide dojo out in Pennsylvania, and I train at the AML Training Center. So I talk to him all the time. I love Burger. He's my boy.
That's amazing. And I know this is a wrestling podcast, and that question might have seemed wrestling related, but I do believe he was asking for your fondest memory of an actual cheeseburger.
No, I was going to be my second question. I was going to bring it around. I was going to say, and now that I've asked that, what is your fondest memory of a cheeseburger?
And in Iowa, there's a place called Zombie Burger, and they have some of the best stuff you could have. And I watched my wife order a mac and cheese cheeseburger where the bun was fried mac and cheese. It had mac and cheese in the meat with mac and cheese on top of it. And I watched her eat about half of it and look at me going, I can't finish this.
You might have to go to Iowa. That sounds too good.
If you want to have a treat, look up Zombie Burger and look at their menu and just sit there. They have this Elvis one, which is peanut butter, bacon, banana, burger, donut. It's amazing.
Yeah, I know what we're doing after this. We're both going to get in the car and drive to Iowa. So what is your favorite place to stop on the road? Like after a show, what's like Old Faithful for you as far as like getting something to drink besides the bar, I would say?
It depends where I'm at. East Coast, it's Wawa.
Hell yeah.
Here there's no Wawas in North Carolina, so it's been Sheets.
Mhm.
You go into the Midwest, it's Quick Trip, which is spelled with a K, KWIK. It's Quick Trip. And then out way west, it's the Whataburgers or In-N-Out Burgers.
Wawa or Sheets? Do you have a preference?
Wawa. I know I'm gonna get yelled at, but yeah, Wawa. But I won't turn down Sheets.
Yeah, Sheets is great. My wife's family's from Philadelphia, so I've been baptized in the the well water. So
That's where I got baptized. So
Favorite combination? Well, do you go to cookout?
oh yeah, I go cookout all the time. I love
Okay.
cookout.
Favorite cookout order? Like, or
It's
nothing, just your cookout combination.
so the tray. It's a tray, and I always get the country. What is it? The club grilled chicken sandwich with no tomato. Double up on the cheese curds because they have really good cheese curds, and then a huge cheer wine. And then I always order a hot dog on the side. If I'm not driving, it has to have chili on it. But if I'm driving, just plain.
their hot dogs are underrated. I also get a hot dog on the side.
Yeah. Yep. But I got Caprice Coleman's the one that introduced me to cookout. And again, I was spoiled because I lived in the Midwest and they don't have it. So I remember when I moved here, there was two things that my wife and we craved. And that was Cookout and Waffle House because we didn't have them in the Midwest. And I told her we got to pace ourselves. We don't want to drink, you don't want to eat too much because then you get burnt out.
Yeah.
So we're doing a really good job of that. And I've been doing that with Cheerwine too, because Cheerwine we didn't have. And I love Cheerwine.
What is the appropriate time in between Waffle House trips for you?
Anytime. I love Waffle House. So whenever you're hungry. We did one road trip where we did Waffle House every single time we ate.
Amazing.
How
did you feel after that?
I don't those hotel bathrooms I should apologize for because Malonis and I are two very large men and we took the challenge, the Briscoes challenge to it. So we took it and Waffle House for every meal. And again, I apologize to the cleaning staff of those hotels that had to clean up those bathrooms after us.
I will leave them a tip.
Yeah, we always left a tip. Yep. We're really pretty clean guys, but we both felt like, hey, if they gotta do this after us, Yeah.
Favorite sport that is not wrestling?
Football and baseball are tied, and I'm getting into UFC a little bit more too. So those three are all pretty much tied right now. But played football as a kid, played baseball as a kid, growing up in Wisconsin, you have the Packers. And it's just ingrained in you. And then the Brewers, which I'm very disappointed Carolina doesn't have a Major League Baseball team. But yes, we got the Knights and all that. So I just hate the White Sox.
I'm imagining right now if I put you at home plate, you're just hitting dingers.
I used to be the power hitter. I was the catcher and the power hitter.
Awesome. Yeah.
That's what I figured.
You look like the secret weapon on somebody's church league softball team.
I used to, and then wrestling caught up to me. So now running's not an option.
And I mean that as very much of a compliment. My last question: you mentioned him earlier, and you just mentioned him again. What was it like working with the Briscoes?
Two of the greatest men on earth. I miss Jay every day. I think about him, and I miss him. They took me under their wing right when I got to Ring of Honor, and they showed me the ropes. And they're Ring of Honor royalty. I don't care what you say. When you say Briscoes, you think Ring of Honor. When you say Ring of Honor, you think the Briscoes. And I got really close to both of them. In fact, Chicken's. I have a joke with Chicken right now, Mark, because his youngest son was just born. They named him Matthew. I'm like, oh, thanks for naming the kid after me. He's like, I didn't name him Beer. I was like, no, my real. He's like, your name's Beer, and we were joking about it. But they taught me so much, and then they're the Good Brothers on the Road. I always had drinking buddies, just two great guys. And again, Jamin, I love you. I miss you, and I know you're doing fine up there. But yeah, he that one stung. That one I didn't want to believe, you know. And then going to the funeral and seeing how the family, because I got close to Papa and Mama Bruiser too, and to see how positive they were, kind of helped, with our grief. And that was the first time the Ring of Honor locker room saw each other since Tony bought it. So it was like kind of like a family reunion. And like I said, I still talk to Chicken all the time, and congratulate him when he won the Ring of Honor championship. We actually had a layover in an airport, so we grabbed a quick drink. We had one when we were on the flight. We didn't know together because his connection's in Charlotte. And I was flying home, and then all of a sudden getting off, you're like, hey, what are you doing? Stuff like that. So it's funny how you, especially in wrestling, you bump into guys and stuff. But Yeah.
Last question would be, what did Bruiser Brody sound like?
He would put his hand up and just huss, huss, as like a song.
Amazing.
And then he didn't swear. He didn't curse. So he would.
Did his voice change like Peter's? Did his...
No, it did not. I wish it would have.
Awesome. Well, this has been like absolutely delightful. Like we say that on every interview. We mean it. We mean it. This has been like absolutely like a treat. Like I don't even feel like I feel like we're just like at like a classroom just learning like about our favorite subject. So thank you so much for taking the time.
We just hosted like the Vice show, like Dark Side of the Ring.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of stories, and that was just great. Like we didn't deserve any of this great content. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on.
And before we go, where can everybody find you again? If you don't mind, share a little bit about the AML Wrestling School. If you're in the area, I think you've given enough qualifications as to why you are more than a able teacher.
We're picking up at the AML school. I love it. I'm signing new kids up all the time. It's in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I have people coming from Wilmington and some from Georgia, some from Virginia, and I love it. Come learn. I'll pass on what I know. But you can go to amlwrestling.com. Click on the training link, and there's frequently asked questions. There's connections to everything. And then if you want to sign up, you can sign up right there. It's every Tuesday and Thursday from 6 to 9 p.m. I'm the teacher. I'm the trainer. And like right now we're doing a bunch of Japanese stuff because we're getting Jack ready to go to Japan. Mm-hmm. And I don't care how long you've been in the business. Come on out. I take day 1 to 20-year vets, You can find me on Twitter at BCB Winchester. Instagram is Beer City Bruiser. That's me. Facebook is the Beer City Bruiser. And like I said, I'm on Cameo. So it's Cameo. Just look up Beer City Bruiser. ProWrestlingTees.com/Beer City Bruiser. I actually am going to be debuting a new shirt on there.
You heard it here first.
Next month, probably, because Star Wars theme. So I'm going to be at Galaxy, whatever.
What would it take to get a Bruiser Brody t-shirt? Just a silhouette.
I'll have to take a still of that somehow. I'll have to send it to my graphic designer, see if he can make it.
That's all I want.
I'll make it.
I'll take a still and go here.
Yeah, I'll get to work right away.
Sounds good. And you got to have like the 70s Bruiser Brady, 70s. Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah. Tie-dye shirt.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you so much again. Everybody check out AML Wrestling School. Got some great people coming out there. You mentioned Jack, Clara, David, just like the Silver Fox, who he's slowly like won me over with everything. It's like when I first saw him, I was like Silver Fox, and then just like every single thing he does, it's just like slowly like climbing the mountain of now I just really enjoy him.
Yeah, I talk to him all the time. His real job took him away for a couple months, but like everything I gave him as advice, he's using, and he keeps texting me like, "This is working. Like everything you're saying is working." I'm like, "I told you, man." Like, yeah. And he actually got to take vacation. He said, and wrestling paid for it. He had to thank me. He didn't think that was ever possible. I said, "It is if you work hard.
Yeah,
I'll give you the tools. You just got to use them."
Awesome. Well, go sign up to get those tools. You're wrestling at AML pretty frequently. I think you've got a match with Logan Quindell coming up.
Yep, Texas Bull Rope match.
Yeah,
so
that'll definitely be fun. AML is putting on some crazy stuff. They just had a
dog collar
match. Yeah, they've got scaffold matches, acts of war games. So definitely want to check them out as well. Yeah, thank you so much, and we'll see you on the Bidet Boys for a movie of your choosing.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks.